Aloha and welcome back to the So What podcast. Hope this episode finds you doing well wherever you are in the universe, this plane of existence, multiverse, if you subscribe to that, perhaps the simulation. Today I want to talk about time. Time is fresh on my mind because we recently returned from Japan, and anytime that I have traveled, especially overseas, I've noticed that the experience of time sort of breaks into three distinct areas. It almost follows a story arc. And by that, I mean beginning, middle, and end. And my experience, at least, of the beginning is usually it's a little bit long, drawn out. The middle starts to speed up. And there's also the realization that the end is near. And then the end, it just flies by. There's been multiple trips and journeys where I've seen that, and not just traveling via some vessel from one place to another. It can also happen in work days, with projects. It can happen all over. I think it's just a pretty fascinating experience. One of these games that I used to play when I had a really, perhaps the worst job experience of my life, early 2012, I was working for a boutique resort that shall remain nameless. And it just wasn't the best situation for many reasons, including the ownership and how things were run. And I remember that I would leave my home and I would think of it almost like a video game. Like the day began, it's loading. You had the beginning, the buffering perhaps. And then you'd be on the drive, and then that's the segment where things are just getting started. And I would always mentally map a checkpoint, and there'd be this point in the drive as I drove past Kaneohe Bay, and I'd look out, see the tranquil water if it was the morning, or not so choppy, but a little bit rougher than the stillness of the water in the morning. And I'd look out at the ocean, and that would always be my checkpoint. I would tell myself, hey, before you know it, I'm going to be right back here, and I'm going to see this again. I loved that experience because it was just another thing to help me to appreciate time in a time of my life where I wasn't having a lot of fun. I wasn't enjoying the process or the experience, and really the culture and the vibe. Now, in the years since, I've deployed that tactic during stressful projects in jobs that I have liked, because the reality of our lives it's not always going to be great. It's not always going to be sunshine and rainbows. There's stormy times, there's dark times. There's a lot of just less than ideal things that we experience living in a fishbowl with, nearly 8 billion other souls. There's a lot of energy swirling around, basically. And many times that energy is not our own. Many times things are just beyond our control. This little trick that I would play, this game that I would have with time, it helped through some of the roughest, choppiest patches. Earlier in my life, I remember it was really hard for me to find expanded windows of time where I really felt like I could enjoy what was going on. And I would liken it to, I'd always look forward to Friday, because Friday is like, all right, cool, it's the weekend. Or if I had a job where my days off were broken up and it wasn't the weekend, whatever my Friday was, whether Friday was a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, a Thursday, or Friday, Saturday, or Sunday, or it was actually Friday. And then I'd be stoked because I'd have that night and be like, all right, tomorrow I'm off. And as I went through my day off, I'd kind of only enjoy that night before and then the day. And if it wasn't 2 days batched together, I'd get myself all worked up and hyped over, oh man, I got to go back to work tomorrow. And that was not ideal because I realized how little I was actually living, how little I was actually enjoying. So I really had to work on expanding the amount of fulfillment, peace, some of what we talked about earlier in episodes 1 and 2. And it was, for me, difficult. I got one of those minds that's always running. Earlier this year, someone told me to navigate your mind, it'd be fascinating, but I would need a suit of armor. I was somewhat amused by this statement because if you could see what's going on between my ears, it's probably true. It's all over the place. Can move a mile a minute, can be really slow and very intentional. And then it can feel like there's a symphony of something. I don't want to say chaos, although at times it can be chaotic, but that symphony of something's always got some type of soundtrack popping and going off. As I've come to realize the value of time and really the illusion of it, it's changed my experience. I've gone from being able to just enjoy that night before and perhaps the day of leading up to when I had to go back to work, to finding more windows and pockets of time within each day that I've enjoyed. I've also had experiences of time where it felt like I lived 4 days in one day. And that's something that I would talk to my teacher about. We'd have these wonderful conversations over the years. And her whole thing was, you're on the journey. It's an experience. Everything's an experience. And early when we met, I held multiple jobs simultaneously. I've been one of those people who, for the most part, always had a full-time and many side hustles. And during that chapter, it was very similar. When Audie and I met, I was transitioning through a season of loss into a new season of life. And it was interesting for me because I had sort of my base, then I had all these other things. It was still early for me as a freelance writer. So there were some projects there. There were some projects in social media management, and there were also some projects with doing some SEO, which is funny to me now as I say that because my career in marketing has changed so significantly. SEO is something that I do not touch anymore, although it's something to be aware of. And my involvement with social media management has really shifted. It went from being the full-time social media manager for some different accounts to weighing in to now the only social media I touch is my own. So it's interesting as a creative to also have that simultaneously. But I'd go through these moments in these conversations with audio where I talk about one thing that I was working on, which would then lead into the next and the next and the next. And I realized, wow, you could actually divide your days. There are people who are far greater at time management and structure than I am. Structure and balance is something that I continue to work on and strive to be more efficient with, because I do think having a bit of structure with the flexibility to freestyle and flow as much as needed is important. While also balance is one of those things that, at least for me, being out of whack, if I'm too high or too low, those extremes are less than ideal to function holistically at a good vibration and at a solid level consistently. So when I look at time, how I move through time, when I feel most alive in the moment, it's letting go of this sense that I need to control. And it's in really embracing finding a way to be. Traveling is one of those things where no matter what's going on, you have to be. Whether you're traveling to a new place, a place you've been before, or you're just traveling through your day, finding a way to be still, allowing ourselves to just be, that's so important. Because within each moment, there's something that I like to think of as the space in between. It's almost like within time, within our experience of time. If you can really pause, there is that quiet. Now, keep in mind, a couple minutes ago, I was talking about how crazy and chaotic, magical is what Audie would say. It's not crazy. Magic. Your words have power. Be careful with your words, which are so true. Think about the wonderful experience that can go on in my mind. That pause, those moments, those seconds, those breaths where it's just quiet. It's almost like those moments fill even more space of time. And I'll be honest, I don't understand it. There's periods where in those quiet moments, it's as though I have a vision, a spark of inspiration. And there's other experiences of it where it's just a recharge, it's a refresh. And that's really important. Our lives, as much as I do believe it can be simple, it's as though we're always evolving and revolving at a rate that speeds up. And they say that when we're children, when life is still new, our experience of time is longer because there is so much freshness. And as we get older and as we have more experiences, some of that curiosity dissolves, but also we experience more. And because we have experienced more, our perception of how long that experience lasts changes, it shifts. So going back to what I said earlier about the experience of time and how it divides, it makes sense. It makes sense that in the beginning, something would be longer. In the middle, it would speed up. And at the end, there you go. Someone told me once that when you see the fireworks, that's how you know the end is near. And it's funny, I thought about that same kind of expression so many times. And here in Honolulu, and I'm not sure if it goes on anymore, but for many years, we had fireworks every Friday. It was almost like a breath that the new week would begin shortly, and a moment to kind of celebrate what had just passed, whether it was good, not so, or otherwise. And then there's been times where I'm going through something, and then all of a sudden, for whatever reason, there's fireworks, and boom, there you go, starting something new. So as the new year is upon us, and there'll be fireworks for sure, unless you're living somewhere that's pretty remote and you're not doing it yourself, there's a good chance you're going to experience fireworks. So I throw out there, as the fireworks approach and the new year begins, what will you do? What will we do with the time that we have? For me, there's a number of things. Just being more efficient with my days, creating more time and more space for self-care, continue to explore creative outlets like this, as well as my writing and photography. I think that's important. It's important because if we don't carve out those pockets, our days and our time will just be filled up. So we have to take ownership, get the steering wheel and drive. Another thing I like to think about that someone told me a long time ago, we had that expression, go with the flow. Now, Daryl Harada, he's a kumu, he's a spiritual guide and a mentor to many. I met him much earlier in my journey. And Daryl, when I was talking to him about going with the flow, something he told me was, yeah, but whose flow are you going with? And I'll never forget that. And as I started evolving and working with that thought, I had my own thought regarding it. And it was, be the flow. How do we be the flow? How do we master time? How do we steer and navigate so that no matter what is thrown our way, we can be the calm in the storm of life? Maybe one day I'll have that answer, but today I'll leave you with that. So it is as we wind down 2023. Wish you all happy holidays. Holidays aren't your thing. I still wish you nothing but the best. Good vibes all around. And thanks for being out there. Julio.